some of that video circulating on social media or of the actual arrest. Now, we have tried to contact that stylist as well as that salon. We're waiting to hear back from them to be able to show you some more of that video. But even Kristen and Clinton Brink were killed. Their two daughters were there, ages 7 and 9. Thankfully, their daughters are okay. But here in just a couple of minutes, we'll be hearing from Arkansas State Police and other law enforcement officials, hopefully bringing more details, answering a lot of those questions that the public have right now.
Good afternoon. I'm Colonel Mike Hager, Director of the Arkansas State Police and Secretary, Department of Public Safety. Appreciate you guys coming out this afternoon. We're going to just kind of go through some bullet point information, and I'm sure it's going to spawn a lot of questions. We're going to try to answer as many of those questions as we can. I want to introduce our partners. Well, actually, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but we do have our two deputy directors, Lieutenant Colonel Mike Kennedy and Lieutenant Colonel Jason Aaron, that are with us, and I believe the rest of the people behind me will speak, and I'll let them introduce themselves. I want to start by thanking our investigators. It's hard to express the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into an investigation like this. You could see it on their face when we walked into headquarters last night, had the opportunity to see them, talk to them, thank them in person at the culmination of this. They're absolutely exhausted. They put every bit of their heart and soul into this investigation to get this suspect brought into custody and taken off the streets, and I cannot thank them enough for that. Also want to thank our law enforcement partners. We are truly blessed in Arkansas. It's not always common, and that's unfortunate, but we have a relationship with our state, local, and federal counterparts that's second to none. There was an incredible amount of cooperation and collaboration that went into this investigation. No part is less than any other's part. There's a total package that has to be looked at, has to be investigated, and these groups work together in a very impressive way, and we can't thank them enough, not just on this case, but in every case that we work within state police to have that partnership. I want to thank the public for providing images and videos from cell phones, home, and business security footage that directly advanced this investigation. We'll talk a little bit more about how that played out, but the information that was put out and the request for information back from the public directly resulted in this person being brought into custody. It allowed our investigators a starting point to move forward and to use their skills that they've developed over the years and their experience to bring this person into custody. We had about 500 tips that came in through our phone lines, social media, Not only were there a lot of tips that came in, and we're very thankful for that, but there was a lot of people that have to field those tips. And it's not all badge-wearing, gun-toting members of the state police or Department of Public Safety. We had a lot of civilian personnel that were tasked with that. There was a lot of time and energy spent on triaging those tips and making sure they went to the right people. And so we owe a great gratitude for that support staff that helped with this as well. Although everyone is innocent until proven guilty, we did confirm this morning that our suspect's DNA has been a positive match to the DNA that we suspected to belong to our suspect at the scene. During an interview with investigators, the suspect indicated that he did commit these murders. We executed a search warrant at his residence. There were articles found there that are consistent with being involved in this particular crime, and I will let Major Rhodes speak more of that or more to those details. We do believe he acted alone. We have absolutely no reason to believe that there's anyone else involved, and we do not anticipate any future arrest or any other arrest beyond this suspect. I'm going to go ahead and pass off to Major Stacy Rhodes. She can walk through a little bit more of the information, and I'll return to the podium and we'll answer any questions we can.
Well, good afternoon. As he indicated, I'm Major Stacy Rhodes. I oversee the Criminal Investigation Division for the State Police. And I kind of want to walk you through how we initiated and progressed through our investigation. So, as you all know, we responded to a call for service at the state parks. Two young children were found and indicated that something had happened to their parents on the trail. That initial information that came from the kids gave us our first starting point, which was a description of a suspect. There was another witness at the park that we encountered that gave us additional information about the suspect and a particular vehicle that he was seen leaving the park. With that, we took the information, completed and let me kind of, we'll start there. So from there, we had a pretty good description of our suspect. We did our initial release. Other witnesses came forward that were on the trail during the time that the murders occurred that did not see the murders, but brought forth video footage, photographs that they had taken on their day trip to the park. From that, we obtained a photo. We interviewed witnesses and were able to compile a composite sketch of what we believed our suspect looked like. With that, we received dozens and dozens of tips. With the initial vehicle information that we received, it being a black sedan, one of the initial descriptions was that it was sporty. From that, we received well over 5 or 6, maybe close to 10 videos of this particular car from homes and businesses along the routes in and out of the park. So we were able to ascertain a pretty good description of this vehicle. So with that vehicle information, that became critical in identifying our suspect. So with the photos or the tips that came in with the composite and the photo, as the Colonel said, we received over 500 tips. And initially we were using the names and information to come out to compare with, did they have black vehicles? Did they meet a certain criteria of vehicles? But as we began to hone in on the vehicle, it became clear that it was a Kia Stinger. And we used that information to vet various owners. And our suspect was identified, and with that we sought him out and we located him at a local barber shop there in Springdale. We took him into custody, and with that we spoke to him, and he made statements indicating that he had committed these heinous acts. And our job didn't stop there. We executed a search warrant on his house and also on the vehicle. We are still waiting a lot of testing at the crime lab. But as the colonel said, DNA that was recovered at the initial crime scene matched his DNA that we pulled last night.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Carter. I'm the prosecuting attorney for Washington County, Arkansas. The first thing I want to say here today is that my thoughts are with the Brinks family. There are 3 girls who tragically lost their parents in this case. And although today is a good day for law enforcement, there's a shadow over it because of the tragedy that occurred on Saturday. I want to commend the state police for the work they did in this case. I couldn't be more proud to be an Arkansan today. I couldn't be more proud to be a resident of Northwest Arkansas right now, and I'm confident and satisfied with the work that law enforcement did in this case. Especially, I want to note the cooperation I saw between local agencies in this case. I could name them all off, but I have a list here of 7 to 9 agencies that worked hand in hand to quickly solve this crime, and I commend every law enforcement officer that worked on this case. I also commend any member of the public that provided us information that led to the solving of this crime. I want the public to know that they're safe. The defendant in this case is innocent until he's proven guilty. But I'm confident that we have the right defendant in this case and that the public need not worry going forward. Someday they're going to open Devil's Den State Park, and I'll be on the trail myself when that happens. The defendant will be spending time in Washington County Circuit Court over the course of the coming days. It is my intention to use the full weight of my office to bring this defendant to justice for the Brinks family.
Before we open for questions, just want to touch real briefly on something that gets lost in this sometimes, and that's the family story. We've spoken to the family quite a few times over the last several days, and what we heard consistently is what a loving mother and father they were, loving husband and wife that they were towards each other. They absolutely protected those girls to their fullest extent, to the point that it cost them their lives. We're in awe of this mom and dad. We're also in awe of these girls. The information that they were able to provide to start us down this path to be able to make this arrest, it all started with those 2 little girls. It's incredible. We also don't want to forget that there was a 3rd sister. Thankfully, she was not with the family on the trail that day, but she suffered just as tragic of a loss, and we need to keep that in mind. Because of that, I would plead with you and the public to please be sensitive to the fact that there's a family that's grieving. It's hard to express, because I can't understand it, what they're going through. Misinformation hurts. Speculation hurts. When they read things, when we talked to them earlier today, they expressed that to us, that they're reading things in social media, they're reading things that are just simply not true. And people are speculating, they're talking about things that are not factual, and it hurts. There's no place for that. Along those lines, we have to be very careful in an investigation to be calculated in the amount of information that we put out and when we put that out. I can tell you that this investigative team had one mission and one mission only, and that was to put hands on this suspect and to get him off the streets. And on a daily basis, we got together and we talked about what we felt like that we could put out to the public and what was going to be advantageous for us in the investigation and what could potentially be detrimental. One thing that we did not want to do is put information out that was going to take attention away from someone that we needed to look at. You have to remember all the information that we're working off of started with 2 little girls that witnessed the most horrific thing that you could ever imagine. That was the base of everything that we had. So we had to be careful about relying solely on that information. We had to collaborate that. We're also working in an environment that is half a mile into the woods. So by the time that we get the information from these little girls, and then we collaborate that with members from the public, they can talk or they can, give us further information based on the suspect description and things like that, and then that leads us to a vehicle, and then that leads us somewhere else. This is not an episode of CSI, and it's not going to be wrapped up in a 1-hour episode. It takes hours and hours to develop that information, corroborate that information, and know that it's good information, and know that it's something that we can put out. The last thing that we want to be responsible for is putting information out that's going to hinder the investigation or hinder someone's their likelihood of calling us and putting us onto a suspect that we need to be looking at because it didn't meet all the markers that we thought it should meet. So I hope you can be understanding of that, and I hope as we move forward from here that the speculation and a lot of the talk and a lot of the chatter, especially on social media, that people will be very sensitive to that. This family's been through enough, and they don't deserve to be victimized any further than they already are. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Colonel, can you elaborate more on what was the reason behind this? What was the motive for this? Was this random, or what happened there? And what was the cause of death? How were they killed?
As far as the motive is concerned, it's part of the investigation. It's 2 parts. The first part of the investigation is always going to be to identify and apprehend the suspect. The second part of the investigation is a lot of the whys and a lot of the details. That's still a part of the investigation. I can tell you that we have no reason to believe that there was any known association between our suspect and our victims. There's nothing to indicate that at all. It appears to be a completely random event. As far as the weapon that was used, it was a knife. Our victims died by stab wounds. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Colonel. We've spoken to a few parents from students who he was their teacher in different states, and they all kind of gave this synopsis of perhaps he was a predator. Their children felt like he preyed on younger age girls during his time teaching in those states. We were wondering, have you been exploring any connections to the crimes that McGann may have been connected with, and any indication that this was his first time committing this? Was he after those girls? Were those his target?
From what we know right now, we have no indication to suggest that the girls were his target.
He believed this was his first time, but he just went to that park that one time that day. I heard potentially somebody suspicious could have been there the weekend before. Was he just that first time at the park, or do you think he was laying out and calculating?
Honestly, that would be pure speculation on my part. Now that we have our suspect in custody, there's going to be a part of the investigation that's going to go back, and they're going to look at timelines, and they're going to look at kind of his movements leading up to that, and hopefully that will give us all a better picture of why he did this, how long he had planned this, things like that. But right now, that's all part of the investigation. It would simply be speculation on our part.
I believe he was injured as well. Can you elaborate on that during the attacks?
Yes, he was injured. I do not know the specifics of those injuries. I do know that his injuries resulted in blood loss, and it was that blood loss that allowed us to establish a DNA profile to begin with, and it was that DNA profile that was matched today against our suspect.
I would assume that's any loving parent trying to do whatever they could to protect their loved ones.
Absolutely. I would say you're correct. Yes,
You
ma'am.
mentioned some articles found in the house. What was found?
So if you'll remember the photo that was of the back of our suspect, we did find items that were consistent with what was seen in that photograph.
Was the weapon there?
Well, we don't know that it's the weapon, but we did collect some knives from the residence. We won't know until we test it, obviously.
The arrest itself, did he resist? Was he easygoing? What did that look like?
No, he was completely cooperative.
Can you speak on the terrain, the area that the victims were found in regards to the girls getting to safety to get help? What kind of time frame that would look like for two girls? Was it a rough terrain? Was it something that, another person found them within an hour, or can you speak on that?
So I don't know that we can speak on to the time frame, but the terrain was what you would see in a typical park. I don't know that it was particularly rugged, but it had some inclines. It was fairly maintained, but it was, our estimation was about a half a mile into the park. So you can imagine how long that would take to get out.
One more question. We had heard reports. Can you confirm that the father was stabbed first, the mother took the kids back into the car for safety, went back to help her husband, and then she died too?
So the information that we have is that the husband was attacked first. The mother did not return all the way to the car with the kids. We believe that the mother took them to safety and then returned to help her husband.
I know you all said that the suspect, I believe, indicated that he had committed these acts. Any more specifics on what he may have said since his arrest?
We're not going to comment on that at this point. It wouldn't be fair to the continuing investigation.
And then I assume this would be for maybe more the prosecuting attorney, but do you know yet if you'll pursue the death penalty in this case, or what kind of consequences you might seek?
This case certainly has the aggravators that exist where a jury should get to decide what the punishment for this defendant is. It is my intention to pose that to a jury. So the state will not be waiving the death penalty in this case.
Have family members said that they want you to seek the death penalty?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Did he indicate he plans to plead guilty to this?
Defendant's innocent until proven guilty at arraignment. I anticipate he will plead not guilty, as is custom. I don't know that there's a defense attorney in the United States of America that would allow a defendant to appear at their first appearance and plead guilty. So it is much, much too early to visit about that.
Has he indicated he's going to seek a public defender as a private attorney or anything like that?
I'm not aware private attorney's been retained yet. If he can't afford a private attorney, I anticipate our local public defender's office will be appointed.
I know that y'all spoke that Devil's Den will be closed for the time being, but what about other state parks and the concerns of family and tourists?
Yeah, as far as the question of the state parks being open, I would ask that you send that to Secretary Shea Lewis and his team. I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know what the decision is on that at this point. As far as the safety of our public visiting those state parks, I would say it's absolute as it can be. I mean, it's not like we have a pattern of people being assaulted or attacked in our state parks. You're probably much more likely to be assaulted getting gas at a convenience store on the way home if you look at statistics. So to echo the prosecutor's comments, I would not hesitate to go to a state park today.
I know you're still looking into it, Stacy, but have you found any more information about background? We were last night, you recently moved to the Springville area. Do you have more information you can share? And just employed by the Springdale School District. What else can you tell us?
So, I don't have a whole lot. Some of that we will look into. I can just tell you that we found that he lived in Texas and also Oklahoma and had recently moved here and had taken employment as a teacher. It doesn't sound like he was ever an actual teacher in Arkansas, but that he was a teacher in other locations. Right now we're completely focused on our case here, and we haven't explored any of that background investigation. I fully expect that other jurisdictions will probably reach out to us to see if they have if there are cases throughout the U.S. that may be connected to him. I fully expect that.
But as of right now, he's the only suspect. He's not a suspect in any other incidences here in our area.
That's correct. Not that we've been made aware of. That's for sure.
And recently, moved here a few weeks ago, a few months. Do you know?
I believe it's been a few months. Yes, sir.
Major, can you clarify? You said he made statements indicating that he had killed them. Did he flat out confess, or what exactly did he say?
So I was not actually in the room when he was confessing, so I'm not going to speak to, I certainly don't want to get that wrong, but just know that he did indicate that he had committed the murders.
But would you call it a confession, or you don't know for sure?
I would call it an admission.
Does the suspect have any sort of criminal history that you all know of?
No, he did not. Not any adult criminal history that we've been able to find, for sure.
Did he indicate why Springdale's not that far from the state park? Any indication why he, for 5 days, stayed so close to the scene, or was he planning on fleeing the area or the state at some point?
There was no indication that he was going to flee the area. He actually had a residence in Springdale, so that's why he was in the area. But he gave it doesn't sound like he was making any attempts to conceal. He didn't conceal his car or any of those things. Yes, ma'am?
Any history of mental illness?
Not that we know. We're still exploring. We just took him into custody last night, so we're still vetting a lot of the information that we don't know about him to this point.
How did police pinpoint him at the barber shop?
Good old-fashioned police work.
Was there any technology used or that aided in the investigation?
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, were there any license plate readers or anything that gave a tip to where he was at that point in time? Or?
I'll just say this, that there's rarely a case that we work that doesn't include those types of things, so we used everything. When I say that it was all hands on deck and there was no stone left unturned, it involved all of those technological aspects.
With the high volume of tips that came in, can you elaborate on how you sort of knew which ones to look into?
So we had a really good filtering system, and we are aware initially there were some issues with tips and the phone system that we had in place at that time. Once we implemented the tips line, we had a team around the clock filtering through those, and we had a pretty good matrix of the ones that we would push to the top and the ones that we would term a lower priority. So it's, but most of, if we got indication that it involved video, photographs, a first-hand account at the park, those were our priorities.
And I understand that every case is different. But you, for many years, investigated the worst crimes. This typical, a random crime like this, and a person goes back and gets a haircut and the same color.
Nothing about this case is what I would call conventional. In my 27 years that I've been with the state police, this is probably one of the most heinous that we've had, especially the aspect of just how random it was. It's when we were talking last night in the command center that it was every agent's worst nightmare, because in a typical investigation we use what we call victimology, and you can usually kind of pinpoint something that a victim has done or the circumstances they're in, whether it's a domestic violence or just drug related. You can typically narrow down your suspect pool. We had no way to do that in this case, so it made it particularly difficult, and what makes the work by our agents so extraordinary. Yes,
Was
ma'am.
the suspect trying to change his identity at all?
We don't have any indication that he was doing that. He was obviously getting a haircut, but you could chalk that up to school starts next week. So, but he didn't indicate he was trying to alter that I'm aware of, that he was trying to alter his identity.
And you all mentioned that he was cooperative when you got to the barber shop. Any other initial reaction from him when you all showed up? Anything you can tell us?
That's probably best that I not discuss that so early in the investigation to this point.
Can you speak on the role of social media in helping bring about the arrest of this suspect?
I will say that social media did nothing to help our investigation. I would say that it absolutely hindered our investigation. As you heard the Colonel mention, the hurt and just the emotional toil that social media gave to that family. It's so easy to be that keyboard warrior and question everything that law enforcement is doing. And I would just simply say that let us do our job. If you've got a tip, give it to us. Don't spread it on social media unless you're an expert. And if you're an expert, you're probably not on social media.
One of the first details that you all put out about the car was there was tape covering the license plate. Was that the case with his vehicle, and any reason why? Was he trying intentionally to cover up the license plate?
Yes, he did use tape to conceal some of the things that would help identify his vehicle.
Does that lead you to believe at all that he's done this before?
There are indications. I mean, everyone speculates that he took there was a lot of thought that went into this to conceal his identity. I will say that, but on the other side of that, he was also very